let's explore some of the definitions that are out there from a variety of sources about the Holocaust. Now, defining our terms is really important for this incredibly important unit. You'll see some variation in the way sources handle the Holocaust as a unit. So, as we approach this unit right from the outset, I want you to be thinking about what is the purpose of learning, what is the purpose of studying, and in particular, what is the purpose of studying a concept such as the Holocaust in history. Now, we've got a whole range of sources, a whole range of arguments, discussions that exist around this topic. It's going to require a lot of your more intellectual faculties to be applied to this unit. At this outset, I'm going to throw this unsourced, unfortunately, cartoon in your direction. I think it's a really powerful cartoon. Take a moment now to think about what it shows. Take a moment now to throw down a few questions that it generates for you. It perhaps addresses the nature of why we study a unit on the Holocaust in schools. I think it raises quite a number of questions for us that we're going to return to in other contexts, not just in this video. But take a moment, pause the video if you need to, and write down a few questions about this source. Writing down questions, interacting with the video, is a really important part of using a flipped video. So, I invite you now, as you're looking at this video, to approach it differently to just sitting and watching. I want you to be writing down questions when ideas are raised you don't know how to handle or that you don't understand. To write down questions that perhaps you need to follow up, either in your own research or by asking when we meet in face-to-face context, or perhaps you need to check out with friends or do some further reading. Consider a flipped video as a starting point of a discussion, not a finishing point. Hopefully I'll raise ideas for you that you'll want to explore later. It's a starting point, not a finishing point. So, as we work through some definition of terms, what I want you to do now is be perhaps making the odd note, writing down questions that occur to you, and then following these up later on. Let's have a look at this first quote that I've extracted from the United States Holocaust Museum, Memorial Museum's website. Now, as we approach this topic, we're going to be grappling right from the outset about quality sources. And I'd contend that this source, the United States Holocaust Museum, Memorial Museum, I've got to get my M's around the right way, that it is one of the high quality sources on the Holocaust. It defines the Holocaust as the state-sponsored, systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and others, its helpers, its collaborators, between 1933 and 1945. Now that date will vary with some sources, so it's worth noting it down, 33 and 45. The Jews were the primary victims of the Holocaust. 6 million were murdered. I'm going to suggest to you that this second source is also very high quality. Based in Jerusalem, it is Yad Vashem, the Israeli Holocaust Museum, a Jewish Holocaust Museum. And I'd put to you that we should, if these are high quality sources, be able to see them corroborating each other. Right from the outset, I'm throwing to the idea that quality sources require authority, reliability, and we need to be looking at the reputation of these sources. I've made a little bit of a link here to a movie that's out created I think in 2016, Denial, which depicts the legal case between reputable historical sources on the Holocaust and disreputable ones, between authorities and those that purport to be authorities, in fact, a Holocaust denier. Okay, so this is very much a space where a real debate takes place, so we need to be spotting corroboration. Can a source be backed up? Can one source's perspective be supported by evidence, and do others find similar evidence to support it or different evidence that supports it? Let's just have a look at a really simple example of corroboration. The US HMM indicates this is the Holocaust by their definition. State-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of Jews in Europe by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. Would Yad Vashem say a similar thing? Well, yes, it would. So here's an example of two sources corroborating each other. Both of these, we should be able to track back their own sources. I wonder if those particular sites give evidence to support these claims. They do. That's why we're using them. They have authority, they have reputations, they are reliable, they are based upon deep and thorough, documented historical research. Let's see if we go any further. Yad Vashem says the Holocaust is also known as the Shoah, and it's the standard, that word Shoah, is the standard Hebrew term, Jewish term, for the murder of European Jewry as early as the 1940s. So this is new information, but it also corroborates the US HMM. So we're starting to build a deeper understanding, hopefully, of what the Holocaust is. Hopefully you hit pause every now and then. Maybe you need to think about this again. Maybe you're making notes. I hope so. Maybe you're writing down questions, even more important. Yad Vashem goes into even more depth now. It says many understand the Holocaust as a general term for the crimes and horrors perpetrated by the Nazis. Others go even farther and say it encompasses other acts of mass murder as well. We think it's really important, they say at Yad Vashem, to use the Hebrew word Shoah with regard to the persecution of European Jews, not just the word Holocaust. That the word destruction, Shoah, in Hebrew, is considered by Yad Vashem to be a better word than others. And it goes on further in its definition to raise some ideas there. Let's have a look at see if we can corroborate in reverse direction or on other points. US HMM says the Jews are the primary victims and 6 million were killed. The numbers supported by another reputable source. It would suggest then that the information in the US HMM is representative of the information in other sources. I'd put to you that we could find similar information in other sources. Maybe some details will vary, perhaps the dates will vary, as we'll see in another conversation, but the essential ideas are corroborated. If we have a look further down at the green highlighted area, Yad Vashem is also corroborating the sense of murder. They're talking about it being European Jewry, they're talking about murder. The two sources are supporting each other. At this point, we need to talk a little bit about how we might write, and hopefully you've noticed both of these sources are written in a really effective way. Third person, past tense, very clear. Even though it's an emotional topic, murder, even though it's subjective, even though it's something we could be passionate about, both of these historical organisations are using a language that is, as best possible, detached and objective. So we need to pick up on that style, and let's practice that as we try to write our own definitions of the Holocaust. If you're writing a good definition of any historical term, I'd suggest you need a succinct opening sentence. If you're writing one now for the Holocaust, perhaps start out with, the Holocaust is a term which refers to. Something very clear, comes to the point, short, sharp, direct sentence. Then clarify it. Support it. Maybe it'll take a couple of sentences, a second, a third sentence. You might say, the Holocaust can also be referred to as the Shoah. It refers to destruction, murder of who, how many, by. Okay? So depending on what you've said in your first sentence, we now clarify it, flesh it out a little bit more. It's a little bit like the Peel type paragraphs we've spoken about so many times before. Then a good definition will sum it up, perhaps with an example. Maybe there's a concluding point of some further important detail that needs to be made. So in your study now, try to write a short definition of the Holocaust. Hit pause if you need to. Be aware of what the Holocaust is. Hit pause, have a look at the information there. Write a little bit now using that model. In class, we're going to explore this resource. And you can see that we return to the cartoon. We're going to break down that cartoon. We're going to look at a couple of historians. We're going to look at Deborah Lipstadt. We're going to spend a bit of time looking at Yehuda Bauer. And Yehuda Bauer, quite like, he's a Jewish historian. This is his book that I draw a lot of his my information from. Yehuda Bauer is working, well, he was working, as far as I know, still is working, at Yad Vashem, very famous Jewish authority on the Holocaust. Okay. Deborah Lipstadt, also an excellent source. I'm putting her over here in her definition of what the Holocaust is. We'll play with that in class and we'll explore our ideas. I'd suggest at the outset, keeping tabs of good sources will help you in your notes. Perhaps develop a glossary of terms. Perhaps add in some good hyperlinks of sources. As you move along, flesh out your notes. Take your ideas to a different point, a higher point.